After the shocking revelation about Maya's father, the atmosphere at the airport shifted completely. What had begun as a tense misunderstanding transformed into a situation requiring careful handling by everyone involved. Airport security, airline staff, and even the flight attendants realized they were dealing with a family connected to one of the highest-ranking officials in aviation. The pilot, who had acted hastily, had no idea of the storm about to hit him. The moment the officers verified the mother's claim about her husband's role, they made a series of phone calls to the airline's management. They explained the misunderstanding, emphasizing that it involved a young, innocent girl and her composed mother, as well as the father's high-ranking position at the FAA. Airline supervisors immediately recognized the seriousness of the situation. An internal meeting was convened, and everyone agreed that the pilot's actions could not go unchecked. Meanwhile, the pilot remained in the cockpit, reviewing his flight log and preparing for the next trip. He believed he had followed proper procedures by calling security, though he sensed that something was unusual. Suddenly, a flight operations manager approached him, with a tone that immediately made him uneasy. "We need to discuss what happened on your previous flight," the manager said firmly. "It seems there has been a serious misunderstanding and we need your account immediately." The pilot's heart sank. He had thought the incident would be minor, perhaps just a routine report. He did not realize that calling security on an innocent child, whose father was an FAA administrator, could have such significant repercussions. The manager's tone was calm but serious, making it clear that the airline would have to investigate thoroughly. While the pilot recounted the events, airline officials began reviewing camera footage from the boarding process. They watched Maya and her mother quietly following instructions, the girl calm and polite throughout. The more they saw, the more it became clear that the pilot's judgment had been mistaken. There was no disruptive behavior, no cause for concern, and certainly no reason to involve law enforcement. The footage revealed the truth in stark contrast to the pilot's perception. As the airline management continued their internal investigation, news of the incident began reaching higher levels within the company. Executives realized that mishandling the situation could damage the airline's reputation and possibly provoke a formal complaint from the FAA administrator. The pilot, now aware that his mistake had wider consequences, began to feel anxious. He understood that the situation could affect his career, depending on how the airline chose to respond. At the same time, airport staff and flight attendants discussed the incident quietly. Many expressed sympathy for Maya and her mother, noting the girl's bravery and the mother's composure under pressure. They also recognized the pilot's mistake and the potential consequences he now faced. Conversations among staff emphasized the importance of understanding, communication, and restraint in situations where assumptions might lead to unnecessary escalation. Maya and her mother, meanwhile, were finally leaving the airport, unaware of the full scope of the internal discussions and investigations taking place. They walked calmly toward the car, with Maya clutching her mother's hand. "You were very brave, baby," her mother said softly. "You stayed calm, and that's the most important thing." Maya nodded, feeling proud of how she had handled the situation. She still didn't fully understand the implications of her father's position, but she sensed that adults were now taking the matter seriously. Back at the airline's office, executives convened a formal review meeting. They invited the pilot, the flight operations manager, and several senior staff members. The purpose of the meeting was to examine the events, understand where errors had been made, and determine appropriate steps to prevent such mistakes in the future. As the pilot explained his perspective, the management team listened carefully, noting both his intentions and the consequences of his actions. One of the senior executives, a seasoned airline official, addressed the pilot directly. "While we understand that you were following protocol, it is clear that the judgment in this case was incorrect," the executive said. "Mistaken assumptions, especially when they involve young passengers, can have serious repercussions. This is compounded when the family has a direct connection to the FAA. We must ensure this does not happen again." The pilot nodded, realizing the weight of the statement. He understood that his career might be impacted and that he would need to be extremely cautious in future situations. Airline management decided to issue a formal report on the incident, documenting both the pilot's actions and the airline's response. The goal was to show accountability and to prevent similar misunderstandings from occurring in the future. Meanwhile, the FAA administrator, the girl's father, was being briefed about the situation. He remained calm, but his presence in the narrative added immense weight. The airline knew that he had the authority to investigate operations, enforce regulations, and influence policy. Misjudging the situation involving his daughter could have had serious implications, and the executives were aware that handling it correctly was crucial to maintaining trust and safety standards. Back at the airport, passengers who had witnessed the events spoke quietly among themselves. Many expressed admiration for the mother's calmness and the girl's bravery. Others discussed how quickly assumptions could escalate into serious situations and the importance of remaining composed. The story began to circulate in whispers, leaving a lasting impression on those who had witnessed it firsthand. As the internal review progressed, the airline made several decisions. They required the pilot to undergo additional training on handling sensitive situations, especially those involving minors. They also prepared a formal apology to Maya and her family, acknowledging the misunderstanding and reassuring them that such an incident would not happen again. The management team recognized the importance of maintaining the family's trust, given the father's influential position within the FAA. The pilot, now aware of the seriousness of his actions, reflected on the events. He realized that fear and assumptions had clouded his judgment. He understood that while safety was paramount, calm observation and careful communication were equally important. The incident served as a powerful lesson for him and others in the airline about the consequences of hasty decisions. Meanwhile, the mother and Maya reached their car, finally free from the stress of the airport. Maya's mother spoke gently, emphasizing the lesson she hoped her daughter would carry forward. "Sometimes people make mistakes, baby, but staying calm and handling things with dignity helps protect you and others." Maya nodded, internalizing the lesson from a day filled with unexpected challenges and revelations. The family drove home quietly, the city passing by outside the car windows. The events of the day were beginning to settle in their minds. Maya felt a sense of pride in her own composure, while her mother felt satisfied that she had guided her daughter through a difficult experience with calm and care. The pilot, meanwhile, was facing the consequences of his actions, realizing that one misunderstanding could have serious professional implications. Back at the airline, staff continued documenting the incident and implementing corrective measures. Training programs were adjusted, communication protocols refined, and awareness campaigns initiated to prevent similar mistakes in the future. The incident involving Maya and her family became an example of how assumptions and hasty decisions could create unnecessary tension and potentially serious consequences. The FAA administrator, while calm and professional, also recognized the importance of the day's events. He knew that the incident highlighted not only the need for vigilance in aviation, but also the significance of fair treatment, clear communication, and calm judgment. His family's experience became a personal reminder that even small misunderstandings could escalate and that composure was essential in all situations. As evening fell, Maya reflected quietly on the day's events. She thought about the confusion, the tension, and the eventual resolution. She realized that courage was not about being fearless, but about staying calm and composed even when others misunderstand you. Her mother's guidance had been invaluable, and she felt grateful for the support and protection she had received throughout the ordeal. Meanwhile, the pilot faced the consequences of his actions. He understood the importance of humility, careful observation, and thoughtful decision-making. The incident served as a lesson he would never forget, a reminder of the weight that even small decisions could carry in the world of aviation. The day ended with a sense of closure for Maya and her mother. They had navigated a difficult situation with dignity, courage, and composure. The airline had acknowledged its error, and the pilot had been reminded of the importance of careful judgment. The FAA administrator, aware of the events, ensured that the family's experience would lead to positive changes in protocol and awareness, reinforcing the values of fairness and careful observation. The events of the day would stay with everyone involved. Passengers, staff, and airline officials had witnessed a situation that began with misunderstanding, but ended with lessons in patience, courage, and dignity. Maya and her mother returned home, safe and reassured, having faced an extra. The plane touched down smoothly at Atlanta Airport. Passengers clutched their seatbelts as the wheels screeched against the runway, and a soft murmur of relief ran through the cabin. For Maya and her mother, however, relief was only partial. The shadow of the pilot's misunderstanding still hung over them. The moment the plane slowed and taxied to the gate, airport security officers were already waiting as instructed by the pilot. The flight attendants guided the passengers toward the exit, trying to maintain calm. Whispers spread quickly through the cabin. Many passengers who had witnessed the unusual situation exchanged uneasy glances. Some shook their heads, unsure why such attention was being given to a young girl who had been sitting quietly the entire flight. Maya clutched her mother's hand tightly, her small fingers digging in as her heart raced. Her mother's face remained calm, even as her mind raced with questions. She had anticipated misunderstandings before, but never anything like this. She looked down at Maya and whispered softly, "Stay close to me, sweetie. Everything will be fine. Just stay calm and we'll explain." Maya nodded, trusting her mother's steady voice even as fear and confusion battled inside her. The first officer of the airport security team approached the plane. He was tall, in uniform, and carried an air of authority. Behind him, a few more officers waited, their eyes scanning the cabin and passengers. They had been instructed to meet a potential disturbance, but as they approached, they could sense that something was unusual. There was no chaos, no shouting, no real threat. Just a small girl and her mother who were quietly seated, looking anxious but composed. The flight attendant, who had been caught between the pilot's instructions and the reality of the situation, explained quietly to the lead officer. "The pilot requested security because he thought there was a problem with the young passenger, but I believe there has been a misunderstanding. She hasn't done anything wrong." The officer nodded slowly. He looked down at Maya and gave her a polite smile. "Hello, young lady," he said. "Can you tell me what happened?" Maya, still frightened, tried to speak, but her words came out in a small whisper. I didn't do anything," she said. Her mother quickly added, "She has followed all the rules and nothing she did was inappropriate. This is a mistake." The officer paused, looking at both of them. He could sense the truth in her voice. The girl was calm, polite, and clearly innocent. The mother spoke with confidence and authority, the kind that came from experience and understanding. Still, the officer had to follow protocol. He asked a few questions, making sure he understood the situation correctly. Passengers nearby continued to watch quietly. Some whispered among themselves, expressing surprise that a young girl was the center of such attention. Others frowned at the unnecessary tension caused by the misunderstanding. A few shook their heads, thinking about how quickly assumptions could escalate, especially in places where authority and safety were involved. Maya's mother maintained a calm and composed tone throughout the questioning. She explained clearly how they had boarded, how Maya had behaved, and how there had been no incident to justify calling security. She was careful not to sound angry or defensive, knowing that staying composed would help her daughter and diffuse the situation. The officers listened attentively, realizing that the misunderstanding was entirely on the pilot's side. As the discussion continued, one of the officers asked for identification, standard procedure. The mother provided hers calmly. She also mentioned in passing that Maya's father worked for the FAA. At first, the officers didn't immediately grasp the importance of the statement, but as she spoke more, they realized the potential significance. The father was not just any employee. He held a high-ranking position that oversaw aviation safety and regulations nationwide. The realization slowly dawned on the officers. They exchanged glances, understanding that this was no ordinary situation. Mistakenly calling security on a child connected to someone in a position of immense responsibility could have serious consequences. The tension shifted from worry about a potential incident to careful consideration of how to handle the situation without causing unnecessary embarrassment or trouble. Maya's mother noticed the change in the officer's demeanor, but stayed calm. She held Maya close, speaking softly to her. "See, baby, everything is fine. They're just figuring things out." Maya nodded, feeling a bit of relief wash over her. Her mother's calm presence helped her see that the situation, though serious, was under control. Meanwhile, the pilot remained unaware of the developing story. He had assumed that calling security was the proper course of action. He had no idea that the family he had flagged was connected to someone with immense authority in aviation. The flight attendants, who had been silently following the events, knew that a delicate situation was unfolding. They exchanged worried glances, understanding that the pilot might soon face serious consequences for the mistake. The lead officer, now fully aware of the family's connection, decided to handle the situation carefully. He stepped aside with the flight attendant and quietly confirmed the details. Meanwhile, the other officers remained polite but alert, watching the family and ensuring that the disembarking process remained orderly. Passengers continued to move past, some sneaking curious glances at Maya and her mother, sensing that the story was far from ordinary. Finally, the lead officer approached the mother. Directly, "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "we understand there has been a misunderstanding. We appreciate your patience and cooperation. Please know that no further action will be taken." Maya's mother nodded, her composure unwavering. "Thank you," she replied politely. "I just want to make sure my daughter is safe and treated fairly." Maya, sensing the shift in the mood, let out a quiet breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her mother hugged her gently, whispering, "It's okay, baby, you were brave and everything is going to be fine." Maya clung to her mother, feeling warmth and relief. The fear and tension began to fade, replaced by a sense of reassurance and safety. As they walked through the airport, passengers whispered about what they had witnessed. Many expressed admiration for the girl's composure and the mother's calmness. Others quietly criticized the pilot's hasty actions, understanding that assumptions had caused unnecessary stress. The airport staff worked efficiently, ensuring the family's exit remained smooth and orderly. Once they were clear of the immediate situation, Maya's mother explained gently to her daughter what had happened. "Some people make mistakes. Baby, the pilot misunderstood you, but you stayed calm and that's very brave." Maya nodded, understanding that her calmness had helped prevent the situation from becoming worse. She realized that adults could make errors and that staying composed in the face of misunderstanding was important. The story of what had happened on the plane began to spread quietly among airport staff. They spoke in hushed tones about the young girl who had been accused unjustly and the mother who had handled the situation with dignity. Though it had started as a tense moment, it had become an example of how calmness, composure, and clear communication could resolve misunderstandings. The mother, still holding Maya's hand, led her toward the baggage claim. She knew that the story was not over, and that the family's connection to the FAA would soon make the pilot and the airline aware of the full implications. But for now, she focused on comforting her daughter, helping her navigate the busy airport and keeping her safe from further stress or attention. Maya looked around, noticing the other passengers and the busy terminal. She felt a mixture of curiosity and relief. Her mother smiled at her, proud of how well she had handled the situation. "See, baby?" she said gently. "Sometimes people make mistakes, but staying calm and polite helps everyone." Maya nodded, absorbing the lesson quietly, understanding that her courage had made a difference. Meanwhile, the officers involved in the incident began reporting back to their supervisors. They explained the misunderstanding, the family's composure, and the mother's clear explanation. They also noted the family's connection to the FAA, understanding that this incident would likely reach higher levels of the airline and Federal Aviation Administration. The weight of the situation began to settle on the pilot, who had acted hastily without realizing the full context. By the time Maya and her mother reached the exit, the airport staff had adjusted their approach. They allowed the family to move freely, ensuring they could continue their journey without further stress. Passengers looked on, some whispering quietly, recognizing that the tension had dissipated and that calmness and clarity had prevented a minor misunderstanding from turning into something far more serious. As they exited the terminal, Maya felt the warmth of the afternoon sun on her face. She held her mother's hand tightly, feeling safe and reassured. Her mother smiled down at her, proud of her bravery. "You did very well, Maya," she said softly. "Sometimes people will misunderstand, but you stayed calm. That's what matters most." Maya smiled, realizing that the day had taught her an important lesson about patience, courage, and composure. She understood that adults sometimes make mistakes, but staying calm and kind could help resolve even the most tense situations. Together they walked toward their waiting car, ready to continue their journey. It was a bright morning at New York's bustling airport. People hurried through the terminals, rolling suitcases behind them, talking on phones, and sipping coffee. Among them was a small family, a young black girl named Maya and her mother, walking carefully toward their gate. Maya clutched her small backpack, eyes wide with excitement and a little nervousness. She had never flown alone, and this was her first trip across the country. Her mother held her hand tightly, guiding her through the crowd, keeping a watchful eye on everything around them. The family reached the gate just in time. The line was long but orderly. Passengers chatted softly or stared at their phones while waiting to board. Maya's mother smiled at her, encouraging her to stay calm and follow the rules. "Remember, Maya," she said, "we just stay in line. Keep our boarding passes ready and be polite. Everything will be fine." Maya nodded, feeling both excited and a little anxious. As the boarding process began, the flight attendants called passengers in groups. Maya and her mother waited patiently, keeping to their place in line. Everything seemed normal. People stepped onto the plane one by one, finding their seats and stowing their luggage. Maya and her mother entered the plane last, trying to find their assigned seats. Maya looked around, noticing the rows of seats, the overhead bins, and the small screens in front of her. She was fascinated but also a bit overwhelmed by all the passengers already seated around her. Her mother helped her get settled in her seat. "We're almost ready to take off," she whispered. Maya smiled, trying to feel brave. She carefully placed her backpack under the seat in front of her and buckled her seatbelt. For a moment, everything seemed perfect. The hum of the engines, the chatter of passengers, the gentle announcements from the flight attendants, all of it felt exciting and new. Maya's mother relaxed slightly, proud that her daughter was handling the experience so well. Then, something unexpected happened. The pilot, speaking from the cockpit over the intercom, called the flight attendant to come forward. Maya's mother looked up, confused. The flight attendant approached the girl's seat hesitantly. "Is everything okay?" Maya's mother asked, her voice calm but firm. The flight attendant hesitated, glancing toward the cockpit. "The pilot wants me to ask about your daughter," she said carefully. Maya felt a sudden lump in her throat. She didn't understand why anyone would need to question her. She had not done anything wrong. She had followed all the rules and behaved politely. Her mother put a reassuring hand on her shoulder, keeping her calm. "It's okay, Maya," she said quietly. "Let's just listen and explain." The flight attendant spoke gently to Maya, asking if she had caused any problems during boarding. Maya shook her head, trying to explain, but her words came out in a nervous whisper. I didn't do anything," she said. Her mother added calmly, "She has been perfectly fine, and we have been following all the rules." However, the pilot had already formed his opinion. From the cockpit, he could see the boarding process on the camera screens and believed Maya had been difficult or uncooperative. He was convinced he was handling a potential threat, even though the girl had done nothing wrong. The flight attendant, unsure what to do, followed the pilot's instructions and called airport security to meet the plane upon landing. Passengers around them began to notice the unusual attention. Some whispered among themselves. Others stared, confused and concerned. The atmosphere shifted from calm and ordinary to tense and uncomfortable. Maya's eyes filled with tears, and she clutched her mother's hand tightly. Her mother stayed, calm, speaking quietly to Maya, trying to reassure her. "It's okay, baby. Just stay calm. We'll explain everything," she whispered. Meanwhile, the pilot communicated with air traffic control, explaining that there was a situation on the plane requiring authorities. The words felt heavy and serious, even though no one on board fully understood what had happened. Passengers glanced nervously at one another, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. The young girl sat quietly, trying to stay brave while the adults around her reacted to the growing tension. Flight attendants did their best to maintain calm. They walked past rows of anxious passengers, offering polite smiles and gentle reassurances. "Please remain seated," they said. "Everything will be fine." But despite their efforts, the mood on the plane had changed. People were uneasy, and whispers continued to spread. Maya's mother remained composed, shielding her daughter from the full weight of the situation, even though she felt her own frustration building inside. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Maya's mother spoke, quietly to the flight attendant, trying to clarify the misunderstanding. She explained that her daughter had done nothing wrong and that the pilot had misread the situation. The flight attendant nodded, trying to stay neutral, knowing that she was following orders, but also seeing the innocence of the girl and the mother's calm demeanor. The engines roared to life and the plane began taxiing down the runway. Passengers fastened seatbelts, bracing for takeoff. Maya squeezed her mother's hand tightly, seeking comfort. Her mother stroked her hair gently, whispering, "It's okay, Maya. Just stay calm. We're almost in the air, and then everything will be fine." Despite the pilot's concern, the girl remained quiet and compliant. She had done nothing wrong, yet the situation had escalated far beyond her understanding. The tension was palpable, but the mother's calm presence helped her endure it. Other passengers began to notice her bravery and the mother's composure, which contrasted sharply with the unnecessary seriousness of the pilot's actions. As the plane lifted off the ground, the mother continued to hold Maya's hand, whispering reassurance. She knew that explaining the truth would take time, but for now she focused on keeping her daughter safe and calm. The plane climbed higher into the sky, carrying with it the weight of the misunderstanding and the growing curiosity of passengers who had witnessed the unusual events. The young girl looked out of the window, trying to distract herself from the tension. She watched the city shrink beneath them, cars and buildings becoming tiny as the plane rose higher. Her mother smiled gently at her, reminding her that soon, everything would be sorted out. "We'll handle this," she said. "Just stay calm and trust me." Meanwhile, the pilot remained in the cockpit, still convinced that he had acted correctly, unaware that the family he had targeted had connections that could complicate matters far beyond what he imagined. The seeds of an extraordinary twist were already in place, though no one on board yet knew how it would unfold. Passengers began to settle in, but the memory of the unusual event lingered. Whispers continued, and curious glances were exchanged. Maya, though scared, felt the support of her mother and gradually regained some courage. She understood that adults sometimes misjudge situations, and that staying calm was the best way to navigate confusion. By the time the plane reached cruising altitude, the mother had ensured that Maya felt safe and protected. She knew that the real story was only beginning, and that what happened on the plane would lead to consequences the pilot could never have anticipated. For now, they remained calm, quietly preparing for the next chapter of the experience, knowing that courage, patience, and composure would see them through. Even though the incident had started as a misunderstanding, it revealed much about fear, judgment, and the responsibility of adults in positions of authority. The young girl had remained innocent and brave, the mother had shown wisdom and calm, and the pilot had unknowingly set the stage for a shocking revelation that would soon change everything. As the plane flew steadily toward Atlanta, the family held on to each other, ready to face whatever came next. The incident had shaken them, but it had also shown them the importance of dignity, composure, and the power of standing calmly in the face of unfairness. As Maya and her mother walked through the terminal, They could feel the tension around them begin to shift. The initial worry of the flight was fading, replaced by a quiet curiosity from the passengers and staff who had observed the situation. Some whispered to each other, trying to piece together what had happened. Others shook their heads in disbelief that a young girl could have been mistaken for causing trouble when she had done nothing wrong. But what was about to happen would make the story far more surprising than anyone had imagined. Maya's mother held her hand tightly, walking calmly toward the baggage claim area. She had been careful not to let her daughter see too much of the stress in her own face, knowing that Maya would be comforted by her calm demeanor. "Everything is okay, baby," she said softly. "We are almost out of this, and then we can go home." Maya nodded, still feeling a little nervous but trusting her mother completely. As they approached the area where passengers collected their luggage, one of the officers who had been involved in the incident stepped aside to speak quietly with the lead officer. They were discussing the unusual details of the situation. The young girl had remained quiet, polite, and composed. The mother had explained everything clearly, and now the mother had casually mentioned something that immediately caught their attention: the father's occupation. "He said she's the daughter of an FAA administrator," one officer whispered to the other. "Do you realize what this means?" The other officer nodded, eyes wide. They suddenly understood the potential impact of the pilot's mistake. Calling security on the daughter of someone who oversaw aviation at the federal level was not a minor error. It could have serious consequences for everyone involved. The officers quickly adjusted their approach. They now understood that they needed to handle this situation delicately. The family had been polite, calm, and completely innocent, and they had connections that made them extremely important in the world of aviation. The lead officer approached Maya's mother with a respectful nod. "Ma'am," he said, "we understand the full situation now. We want to apologize for any inconvenience and assure you that no further action will be taken." Maya's mother nodded politely, her calm composure unwavering. She smiled gently at the officer, her voice steady. "Thank you," she replied. "My main concern was my daughter's safety and making sure everything was handled correctly. I appreciate your understanding." Maya squeezed her mother's hand, sensing that the atmosphere had changed again, this time in their favor. Meanwhile, word had started to spread quietly among the airport staff and airline employees. Flight attendants who had witnessed the boarding incident shared the story in hushed tones. Passengers who had been seated nearby whispered about the calm young girl and her composed mother. When the detail about the father's position as an FAA administrator became known, the reactions changed dramatically. What had seemed like a simple misunderstanding now had a layer of seriousness that no one could ignore. The pilot, sitting in the cockpit after the flight, had no idea that the situation had taken such a turn. He had assumed that calling security was the right action, believing he had followed protocol. He had not realized the family's connections or the potential consequences. Now, the officers and flight attendants who knew the truth began to understand that the pilot might soon face more than embarrassment. There could be formal inquiries about the incident, and the airline would have to respond carefully. Maya's mother guided her daughter to the baggage claim area, where they waited quietly for their luggage. Even in this ordinary moment, the tension of the earlier misunderstanding lingered. Passengers nearby glanced at them, some with curiosity, some with admiration. The mother's calmness and the daughter's composure had left a strong impression, contrasting sharply with the pilot's hasty judgment. Then, the moment of revelation arrived. One of the officers, speaking quietly but clearly, asked to confirm the mother's statement about her husband's occupation. "Are you sure your husband works for the FAA at that level?" he asked. The mother nodded. "Yes," she replied simply. "He oversees aviation safety regulations nationwide. His job involves ensuring that airlines follow strict safety procedures." The officer's eyes widened. He immediately recognized the weight of the situation. Not only had the pilot mistakenly called security on an innocent child, but the child's father had the authority to influence or investigate airline operations across the country. The realization made the officer take a step back, understanding that the entire incident could have serious repercussions for the airline and the pilot. Maya, still holding her mother's hand, watched as the adults around them reacted. She didn't fully understand the importance of her father's job, but she could sense that the situation had changed. The nervousness in the airport staff, the hushed whispers, and the careful attention from the officers all told her that something significant was happening. Her mother noticed her daughter's wide eyes and whispered, "See, baby? Everything will be okay now, we just need to stay calm." As the officers finished their discussions, they returned to the mother and daughter with a more formal approach. "Ma'am, we will make sure the airline and the pilot are aware of the misunderstanding," the lead officer said respectfully. "We appreciate your patience and your composure. You handled this situation perfectly." Maya's mother nodded, smiling gently. "Thank you," she said. "It's important to stay calm and handle things with dignity. That's what I taught my daughter." Passengers in the area continued to watch quietly. Some whispered among themselves, expressing amazement at the unfolding events. A few shook their heads, commenting on how quickly assumptions could escalate into serious situations, especially in environments where safety and security are highly valued. The story of the young girl and her mother was spreading quietly but rapidly, leaving a strong impression on those who witnessed it. Meanwhile, the airline staff and airport management began preparing to address the incident internally. They realized that a mistake had been made and that it involved someone with considerable authority. Plans were made to handle the situation carefully, ensuring that the pilot understood the error and that the family's experience was acknowledged and respected. The pilot, still unaware of the full implications, would soon learn about the gravity of the misunderstanding. The mother guided Maya through the rest of the terminal with care. She kept her daughter close, explaining softly, "Sometimes people make mistakes, baby, but staying calm and being polite helps solve problems. You did very well today." Maya nodded, feeling a mix of pride and relief. She understood that her calmness had helped prevent the situation from becoming worse, and that her mother's guidance had been crucial in navigating the challenge. As they approached the exit, the mother's phone rang. It was her husband, the FAA administrator. She answered quietly, explaining the situation briefly. The father's reaction was calm but serious. He assured her that everything would be handled properly and that the airline and pilot would face the necessary follow-up. Maya listened quietly, feeling the sense of protection that came from knowing her father was involved and aware. By now, the story had taken on a life of its own. Passengers, airport staff, and airline employees all understood that this was no ordinary incident. It was a situation where calm, dignity, and clear communication had prevented a minor misunderstanding from escalating into something far more serious. Maya and her mother had shown composure and bravery, leaving a lasting impression on everyone around them. Even as they left the airport, Maya felt the weight of the experience settle in her mind. She had been scared, nervous, and unsure at first, but she had stayed calm. She realized that courage wasn't about being fearless, it was about remaining steady and polite, even when others made mistakes. Her mother smiled at her, proud of her bravery and maturity. Meanwhile, the officers and airline staff continued coordinating internally. Reports were being written, statements collected, and plans made to prevent similar misunderstandings in the future. The pilot, once unaware of the situation's magnitude, would soon understand that a single assumption could have far-reaching consequences. The presence of an FAA administrator in the family meant that the airline would need to be especially careful in addressing the error. As Maya and her mother reached their car, the sunlight of the afternoon bathed them in warmth. The tension of the morning had dissipated, replaced by relief, pride, and a sense of calm accomplishment. Maya held her mother's hand tightly, feeling safe and reassured. She understood that the day had been a lesson in patience, courage, and the importance of composure, even when others acted hastily. For the first time since the incident began, Maya allowed herself to smile fully. She had faced a frightening situation, stayed calm, and been protected by her mother's wisdom. She had also learned that sometimes the actions of adults could be unpredictable, but dignity, patience, and honesty would always guide the way. The story of what happened on the plane, now combined with the revelation about her father's position, would soon reach many people. It would serve as a lesson about assumptions, misunderstandings, and the importance of remaining calm under pressure. For Maya, her mother, and the officers involved, it was also a reminder that bravery and composure could. After the stressful events at the airport, Maya and her mother returned home feeling a mix of relief and reflection. The tension that had dominated the morning was finally gone, replaced by calm and quiet understanding. Maya, holding her mother's hand tightly, walked into their home still processing everything that had happened. The world outside the airport had seemed chaotic, but inside their home, safety and comfort awaited. Maya's mother guided her to the living room and sat her down on the couch. "Today was a big day, Maya," she said softly. "And you were very brave. I am so proud of how you stayed calm even when things felt scary." Maya nodded, feeling both proud and exhausted. She realized that her composure had helped her mother handle the situation and had prevented the misunderstanding from getting worse. The mother smiled and continued, "Sometimes people make mistakes because they jump to conclusions. It's not your fault, and it's not anyone's fault really. What matters is how you respond. You stayed calm, and that is very important." Maya listened intently, absorbing the lesson. She began to understand that courage wasn't just about facing danger. It was about staying composed and respectful, even when others acted wrongly. Meanwhile, the FAA administrator, Maya's father, had been informed of every detail. He had received a report from his wife and had spoken with the airline officials directly. Though he remained calm and professional, he understood the severity of the situation. Mistakenly calling security on a child, especially his own, could have serious consequences if mishandled. However, seeing how his wife and daughter had responded with dignity reassured him that the family's actions had prevented a worse outcome. Later that evening, Maya's father sat with the family at the dinner table. He wanted to discuss the day's events with them, not with anger, but with a focus on lessons learned. "Today showed me something important," he said. "Even when people make mistakes, staying calm and handling the situation politely makes a big difference. Your courage today, Maya, helped prevent this from turning into something much more serious." Maya looked up at her father, her eyes wide. She felt proud that he noticed her bravery. The father continued, speaking in a calm but serious tone. "Sometimes people assume the worst, especially in jobs where safety is a big concern. That's why it's important for everyone to act carefully, not based on fear or assumption, but on facts and understanding." He looked at the mother and nodded. "And thank you for guiding her through this. Your calmness and clarity made all the difference." The mother smiled, feeling appreciated but also quietly proud of the lesson her daughter had learned. In the days that followed, the airline reached out formally. They issued a written apology to the family, acknowledging the mistake and expressing regret for the misunderstanding. The airline emphasized that they had reviewed the events carefully, that they recognized the pilot's error, and that measures were being put in place to ensure such incidents would not happen again. The family received the message with dignity, understanding that accountability and acknowledgement were key to preventing future issues. The pilot, meanwhile, faced consequences within the airline. He underwent additional training on handling sensitive situations, particularly those involving minors or passengers who might be misunderstood. He was required to attend sessions on communication, observation, and proper judgment in high-stress environments. The experience left him humbled and more aware of the responsibility his role carried. Maya, watching the developments unfold, felt a growing sense of confidence. She realized that even though she had been the center of a stressful situation, she had contributed to its peaceful resolution simply by staying calm. Her mother noticed her thoughtful expression and said, "See, Maya, even small actions like staying calm and polite can have a huge impact. You helped everyone handle the situation better." Maya nodded, understanding that her own courage mattered, even in situations where adults had made mistakes. School friends, neighbors, and family members who later learned about the incident were surprised and impressed. Many commented on Maya's bravery and the mother's composure. Some discussed how quickly misunderstandings could escalate, and how important it was to remain calm under pressure. The story became an example of how dignity, patience, and careful communication could turn a potentially tense situation into a lesson in understanding and respect. As the days turned into weeks, the family reflected on the incident. They discussed how assumptions, fear, and quick judgments could lead to unnecessary tension. They also recognized the importance of clear communication, calm responses, and the courage to remain composed. Maya understood that people might make mistakes, but handling those mistakes with dignity could prevent escalation and even teach others a valuable lesson. The FAA administrator, Maya's father, used the incident as a teaching point in his professional life as well. Without revealing personal details, he emphasized to his colleagues and staff that even small mistakes in judgment could have big consequences. He highlighted the importance of fairness, observation, and calm communication in aviation and safety operations. The incident with his daughter became an example he could refer to when explaining the importance of careful judgment and composure under pressure. Meanwhile, the pilot slowly regained his confidence, learning from the experience. He reflected on how assumptions and fear had clouded his judgment. He recognized the importance of treating every passenger with fairness and understanding. Though he initially felt embarrassed and stressed by the situation, he came to see it as a lesson that would guide him for the rest of his career. Maya's mother continued to reinforce the lessons of calmness and composure in everyday life. She explained that while fear and misunderstanding were natural, they could be managed with patience, clear thinking, and polite communication. Maya learned that day that her reactions could shape the outcome of situations far beyond her control, and that courage and calmness were powerful tools in navigating life. Months later, the family looked back on the event with perspective. What had started as a frightening experience had turned into an important life lesson. Maya felt proud of herself for staying composed. Her mother felt satisfied that she had guided her daughter through a difficult moment, and her father knew that the incident would help reinforce the importance of calm and careful judgment in aviation and everyday life. The airline implemented new protocols, ensuring that flight crews received additional training on handling passengers, especially children, with care and respect. Policies were adjusted to reduce the likelihood of misunderstandings, escalating unnecessarily. The incident became an example in training sessions, teaching staff how assumptions could lead to mistakes and how calm, respectful behavior could prevent serious consequences. Maya herself began to see the world differently. She understood that bravery was not only about facing danger but also about managing emotions, staying calm, and treating others with respect, even when situations seemed unfair. She learned that actions, even small ones, could influence outcomes and that patience and composure were just as important as courage in difficult moments. As the family continued with their lives, the memory of that flight remained. It was a reminder of how quickly situations could escalate, the power of assumptions, and the importance of handling misunderstandings with care. But more importantly, it reminded them of the strength they found in calmness, dignity, and mutual support. Maya grew more confident over time, understanding that life would present unexpected challenges. She knew she could face them with courage, patience, and composure. Her mother continued to guide her, reinforcing the lessons learned from the experience. Her father, as an FAA administrator, knew that the incident would serve as a teaching moment for both his family and his professional colleagues. In the end, the story of the flight became a tale not of fear or anger, but of bravery, patience, and calm decision-making. The pilot learned an unforgettable lesson, the airline improved its procedures, and Maya and her family emerged stronger and more confident. The experience highlighted the importance of handling misunderstandings with care, the power of staying calm under pressure, and the lasting value of courage and composure. For Maya, it was a defining moment in her young life, a lesson in how, even in difficult and unfair situations, calmness, respect, and dignity could guide her through challenges and leave a lasting positive impact. She knew that no matter what the world might throw at her, staying composed and courageous would help her navigate it successfully. The family would remember that day, not for the tension, but for the lessons it taught them about bravery, patience, and the importance of responding to mistakes with dignity and understanding. It was a day that began with fear, but ended with strength, unity, and a deep sense of pride in how they handled themselves.